Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Okay, fine. So, once again, good afternoon to everyone. Right. Okay, fine. So, I welcome you all to this boot camp of history optional. And you might have seen the schedule of this boot camp, right? So, let me clarify a couple of things which are very important and why it is very important. Like, because sometimes you might feel that it is just a sort of workshop or something like that. It is not a workshop. It's a sort of like, small module you can understand, like, and why this small module is needed, that I'll definitely come on. But before I come to that, like, there's something which is very important, like, that to be discussed, that I would like to start with a brief introduction of mine. So my name is Piyush Kumar, right? And I have done MPhil in history optional, sorry, in not in history optional, in history. And then I have been teaching the UPSC students since 2000, like 13. I have been teaching the history optional students. So coming to the point, the main point. So as you can see, this is a boot camp on history optional. Why? What is the purpose of having this boot camp? The purpose is very simple because there are so many myths, right, regarding this particular optional paper. And as far as these myths are concerned, it is very important, or it is very much necessary that you bust all these myths. Why? Because one rumor you might have heard very frequently, that as far as this optional is concerned, this is a very low scoring subject, right? Like, this is a sort of rumor which is there in the market. But I would like to simply discuss here that whether you prepare pretty well for the subject that you can really expect of getting very good marks, or you just, like, have the same old, like, approach towards the subject, because of what you are not getting the marks. That is the main purpose. And the way you have seen the schedule, like, there are 5 lectures, and in these 5 lectures I have divided everything into, like, period wise. So in one lecture we are going to cover ancient, in one lecture we are going to cover medieval, in one modern, then world, and then finally it comes to the map area. And because all these 5 segments are very important, and in fact, like, every segment must be must be approached very differently, and then only you can, like, think of getting very good marks in the history optional. So one by one I'll be coming to the various aspects, and in fact the main purpose, that how you want to prepare, that is your choice, right? I'm not, like, intervening in that. But then what do you, like, what you are supposed to do for the for the preparation of this history optional, that is very important. And if you do not follow that particular, like, thing, or a sort of right approach towards, like, history optional, in that case you can't expect of getting very good marks. That's the core thing what you have to keep in mind. So, like, in this particular session, as, like, we are going to target specifically the ancient India, right? But before I come to ancient India, let me just tell you, like, a few things which are very common thing. Let's say you have, if you have decided history as in your optional paper, then what do you do? Like, what is the first thing that you do? The moment you decide the history optional, let me tell you very frankly that most of the students are doing the same thing. And in fact, this is so, like, unfortunate, that most of the time you have been advised also in the same way. Okay, you have taken history optional, now this is the right way of doing it. Now, how do you go for it? So first of all, like, when it comes to, like, selecting history optional, you go for few things, such as notes is one thing, and the second thing is books, right? So let's say, like, since, like, in this particular period we have been, in this particular session we have been targeting ancient India. So let's take certain examples from ancient India. So, like, you have to start preparing for ancient India. In that case, what do? You, let's say you have selected one book, and you know that which book is very popular, that is Ancient India by Upinder Singh, right? Or else, like, what do? Like, you just select one notes, you just pick up any notes from the market for that, like, for that matter, and you then start preparing for ancient India from that particular source. My question is very simply this, that is it sufficient? Like, is it like this is how it should be done? Or else there is another thing which is being done by most of the students, that they try to shape their preparation not as per the syllabus which is given. Rather, you try to shape your preparation as per the PYQs, the previous year questions. And in fact, you believe, okay, these kind of questions have been asked, like, in previous years. So that's why you should focus more on these kind of, like, topics. Why? Because they have been repeatedly being asked. And sometimes you fail, like, in decoding those PYQs properly, because you are probably not in a, like, not in a sort of condition that you can, where you can treat the PYQs properly, where you can comprehend the PYQs properly, and that's why you face all these problems. So basically, what I'm trying to tell you, that when it comes to, like, preparing history optional, and the various areas of ancient, medieval, modern and world, you have to follow distinct approach for everything, right? When you have been following ancient India, like if you believe that your expectations are expectations are very similar from ancient, from medieval, from modern and from world, then it is incorrect. The expectations are not very same from all the four areas. When you have been targeting ancient India, in that case you have to follow a particular or a specific approach towards the ancient India, and that's how we'll be able to cope up properly with this examination. Otherwise, the way you have been thinking that you are going to score very good in all the four areas, that is practically not very possible. And do you know one thing, why these kind of things are becoming important day by day? Because if you believe that as far as this particular optional is concerned, it is not going through any change in last 1 decade, then in that case it is incorrect. Of course, the optional, everything is evolving, right? For that matter, like UPSC itself is evolving, right? The discipline is also evolving, and in fact there are new set of authors are coming. They have been writing everything in a very different way. And frankly speaking, when it comes to historiography, which is very important these days, and that historiography itself has been evolving, and in fact in last 1 decade you can find that there are several new trends have come, and you should focus on those new trends also, that how the subject how the subject is being redefined by the new scholars, that too very differently, and the way the subject is being redefined very differently. That's how your that's how I can say that your demands or the demands of this optional paper is also changing, because the subject does not remain same, correct? So when it comes to ancient India, so as I told you that in this particular lecture, we are precisely going to focus on ancient India, and that's how we'll just try to keep it confined to the ancient India only. Now, when it comes to ancient India, so if you have seen the syllabus, in that case you might have noticed that what are the parts which are there in the syllabus. So in syllabus you'll find that it starts from the prehistory, right, and it goes up to 12th century, correct? So it is starting from that prehistory, that is if you'll say in terms of topic, in that case you can find the stone age, which is the first topic, and then the ancient Indian history or ancient Indian history syllabus is ending with the 12th century, and the 12th century, and in fact the period as far as the period between 6th century to 12th century, that is a sort of very dicey period, and I'll come to that also, that topic also, that how to deal with this period between 6th century to 12th century. But then this period between 6th to 12th century also remains very important for you, and that's how a specific kind of approach is needed for that period. Now, first of all, when you talk about this ancient India, what is the age which is being covered? If you'll consider prehistory, in that case, undoubtedly this period becomes very longer. But then it is not important for for us, and that's why leave this prehistory. Let's consider that IBC is the beginning point of ancient Indian history, and it goes up to 12th century. If IVC is the if IVC is the beginning point, we can consider it third millennium BC, or for the safer side, let's consider it 3000 BC. So if it starts from 3000 BC and it is ending at 1200 CE, in that case, in ancient India, you are supposed to cover the history of 4200 years. So there is a very longer period that you have been covering in ancient India, correct? So एक बहुत लंबा period है जिसको आप ancient India में आप cover कर रहे हैं, fine. So when you have been covering such a long period in ancient India, in that case, you have to develop a sort of very different approach towards this ancient India. Now, as I have already told you that when it comes to covering ancient India, what is the basic approach which is being followed by most of the students, that they try to somehow cover the ancient Indian syllabus precisely on the basis of the PYQs, that okay, these are the topics that have been asked in the previous years, and that's why you just cover only those segments of the syllabus and then you leave it. But then when you have been covering such a longer period of time, in that case there are n number of possibilities of the questions, and the way you believe that always the PYQs are being repeated, because this is one thing which is very popular, that the PYQs are being repeated, the PYQs are being repeated, and in fact even the toppers are also suggesting you that you should focus or you should keep your preparation somehow around that PYQs only. So if you are having this approach, in that case it is a wrong approach, and in this lecture I'll just try to prove this particular thing, that how history should be treated, this ancient Indian history should be treated in a very different way, and why and how the new questions are being asked, and Are these questions very similar to the previous questions, or they are very different? Because as I told you that if we'll compare it to the previous year questions, in that case, one thing can be clearly noticeable, is clearly noticeable, that maybe these questions are based on the same themes, right? But the same question is not being asked. Of course, if the modern period is there, or let's say for that matter, Indus Valley Civilization is there. So when it comes to Indus Valley Civilization, undoubtedly there are certain topics or certain aspects of Indus Valley Civilization. Let's say polity is there, like the town planning is there, or architecture is there, the religion or religious patterns are there. Let's say society is there. Okay. The various debates related to IVC, such as its origin, its decline, these are there. So of course there might be so many topics, and in fact the questions are also being asked on the same topics. But when it comes to the questions, it is not necessary that they have been asking the same questions what they had been asking earlier. If you believe ki, earlier they had been asking to write the various theories which have been given for the decline of IVC. And if you are believing ki now also they have been asking the same kind of questions to write the various theories on the decline of IVC, it is not correct. Basically, they have been twisting the questions and their expectations are changing. So that's why when you have been going for ancient India, you have to change your pattern, right? And you have to change the the approach, and how we are going to do it, that is what mainly we are going to discuss in this particular lecture. So this I'll be discussing one by one, as per the syllabus, the way it is given. And in fact, I would like to first tell you that how the syllabus, those syllabus remain same, but the approach is changing. So that we'll try to discuss as per the as per the syllabus. Okay, fine. So now, if we'll see the first topic which is given, that is the source, which is archaeological sources, and archaeological sources, and then it is written exploration, then excavation, epigraphy, numismatic, and then it comes to the literary sources, then it comes to the foreign accounts, correct? So these are the things which have been given in the sources. Frankly speaking, first of all, you should try to understand the significance of sources in ancient India. Now, sources are very important. In fact, for that matter, sources are very important in all the parts. But the sources remain more specific and important in ancient India. Why are the sources very important? Sources are important for this reason, right? That when it comes to writing the history of ancient India and when it comes to the writing the history of modern India, now there is a difference between the two. What is that difference? When you have been writing the history of ancient India, things are not very clear, specifically with respect to historicity. Now, any event that has taken place, let's say 3000 BC, in 3000 BC or 2000 BC, or for that matter, let's say even the 6th century or 2nd century BC. Now, there is no concrete evidence which are categorically telling no, this evidence, this particular event has taken place in the same way, in the same manner, that we do not know. Why we do not know about this? Because ultimately we do not have any as such source which is categorically talking about the event taking place. Now, is this the same question we are struggling with in the modern? No, we are not struggling with the same question. What is the reason? Because in the modern times there are ample amount of sources which somehow makes it very clear for us that the historicity is not doubtful. Okay, of course this has happened, and that's why we have been debating, or we have been struggling with some other questions which are being asked in history, and then the way the historians are trying to answer those kind of questions. In ancient India, what happens, since the historicity itself remain very doubtful, and that is the reason because of what, the sources become very important, and everything should be studied with respect to the sources. Let's say you have been claiming, okay, let's say these are the various reasons for the decline of IVC. Then the point is that how do we know about the decline of IVC? That's very important. There was no newspaper which was covering about it, and then they said, okay, this has happened, or let's say Aryans have invaded. That's the reason because of what IVC had declined. That possibility is not there. But right now, let's say if the Kumbh is happening, okay, there are several newspapers and then print media, electronic media, they all have been talking about it. In that case, it is quite easy now. So would you be questioning over the historicity of Kumbh that happened in 2025? No, you won't be questioning. आप question क्यों करेंगे? Because that you that you do know pretty well that it is not the question. You know that of course this event has happened. Maybe you will be asking a sort of different question for the for this event, that whether it happens successfully or not, that may be a question. But when you have been studying about the happening of Kumbh in, let's say, 6th century BC, frankly speaking, the question would be this: that literally this particular thing happened or not, right? That is the question. So what I'm trying to tell you, that as a source, undoubtedly it is important, because sometimes the questions are being asked from these source, this particular topic. But at the same time, what is important for you, that you also understand the importance of the sources in rest of the areas, and that's how you try to relate every topic, or you try to understand every topic with respect to the sources. This is the reason because of what sometimes you find that the questions are directly being asked from this topic, and then sometimes you'll find that the questions are indirectly being asked from this topic, but the sources somehow remain directly or indirectly always for you, right? Every year, at least you can find one question is being asked on the sources, and in fact, there are certain changes that can be noticed even in the sources also, like the kind of questions which are being asked. Now, what sort of changes, which are there, which are there in the in the questions pertaining to sources? Frankly speaking, earlier what happened, they had been asking very simple question from the sources, okay? Any archaeological sources, there might be a simple question, that how come the archaeological sources are helpful, or the inscriptions are helpful in writing history? How come the let's say any literary sources are helpful in writing the history? But then these days you'll find that they have been asking very twisted and the twisted, and I can say complicated kind of questions, such as now the way they have been asking you to compare the inscriptions with the literary sources, right? Or the various themes which have been picked in those archaeological sources or literary sources, and how come there is a sort of similarities, or a sort of coordination that could be noticed between the literary sources and the archaeological sources. So what I'm trying to tell you, that when it comes to the archaeological sources and the literary, just a second, okay, fine. When it comes to the archaeological sources, yeah, yeah, okay, fine. So I hope you are getting my point. Ki how come the nature of the questions have changed from the sources? And as I told you that the subject itself is evolving, and that's why you should be also ready for these kind of questions which are a bit experimental questions. And in fact, if you believe that you can find the answer of these questions directly in any particular text, then in that case it is a misconception. You cannot find you cannot find the answer of these kind of questions directly, and this is the reason because of what the way I have highlighted a particular theme, that it is learning through concepts, right? That's very important, that you do not mug up. That's the reason because of what I started with this point, ki if you believe that you can shape your preparation of history optional as per the questions that have been asked in the previous year, in that case you are on a wrong track since beginning, and in that case you can't expect of getting very good marks. That's the reason you need to change your strategies. Okay, fine. Let's move to the second topic. So in the first topic, as I told you, that the concept of the sources are very important, and in fact you should be in such a position that if this kind of bounces are coming to you, what you haven't read directly in any material, in any particular text, in that case also your understanding is such deeper, or it's so deep that you can make the answers then and there only, that you can go for these kind of comparisons, and you can link it with the other sort of things. That's how you should prepare this particular topic. So as far as this first topic is concerned, that is the right way of treating with it. Now moving to the second question is the prehistory and the proto-history. Now this is one part which is somehow covering the largest portion of the time. Am I correct? Isn't that true? Now, if we'll talk about the prehistory, that starts from let's say 1.6 million years ago, and that continued till let's say 2000, 2500. In fact, in certain cases, you can find that it goes up to 1500 BC. If we'll talk about the Neolithic in South India, that Neolithic in South India goes up to 1500 BC. So, in terms of span or time span, you can find that this has been covering the larger area. Fine. But then have you seen that so many frequent questions are being asked from this particular part? Have you ever analyzed the questions? They are asking rarely the question from this part. In fact, the pattern that I have noticed, that some one year they'll be asking the question on Neolithic, one year they'll be asking a question on Chalcolithic, one year they'll be asking a question on Megalithic. Frankly speaking, if you'll compare the Neolithic, Chalcolithic and Megalithic, these are the three topics which are precisely falling in the prehistory. One question you can expect from one topic. But then they are not asking the questions they have asked one question on Paleolithic, one in Mesolithic, one in Neolithic. Now, why does it happen? There is a simple answer for that. The answer is very simple, that unfortunately we do not have those many concrete evidences or the sources which are talking about the prehistory in a very clearer manner, right? It is not possible. The sources are very scarce. They are very limited. And in fact, most of the things, I do not know how many of you are aware of this fact, that prehistory is majorly based on not archaeological evidences. It is mostly based on anthropological studies, right? So if you believe that by finding certain stones and certain paintings on the cave walls, the archaeologists were so smart that they were able to write or imagine the life ways of the prehistoric people, then it is incorrect. How come it is possible? Why do you think that it is possible? You just imagine, you just do one thing, keep yourself in place of that, and by keeping yourself in place of that, you try to imagine, is it possible for somebody to write the history of those Paleolithic people or the Mesolithic people or even the Neolithic people on the basis of that? No, it is not possible. It is impossible. Then how do they write? It is mostly on the basis of anthropological studies. And in fact, anthropological, sociological studies are helping us a lot to write the history of this prehistory and proto-history. That is the reason, because of what you cannot find so many questions are being asked on this part. And that's why here you have to change your approach. And by changing your approach, what you're going to do, that you can cover the various dimensions, like from where the possibilities are there. It is not possible that they are randomly picking up any question and they have been asking. It is practically impossible. And that's the reason, because of what, as I told you, that you should try to understand what are the core possible areas from where the questions may be asked, and then you should prepare only on prepare those areas. Now, what sort of recent pattern I have noticed, let me tell you that also. If you'll see the recent pattern, in that case you'll find that, such as Neolithic. In Neolithic, there's a Neolithic debate, or the Neolithic revolution debate, which is the most popular one. But then on regular occasions, the questions are being repeated on Neolithic revolution. But then at the same time, they have started finding the new dimensions. They have started asking the new dimensions on the prehistory, such as the way they have increased the number of questions from the Chalcolithic. Right now, last year only, they ask a question on megalithic, and they are not simply asking the question on megalithic that it was the phase of transition. But this is a sort of very conceptual idea that it was the phase of transition. Rather, they asked about the types of the megalithic cultures. Right, this is what they have asked. Moral of the story is this, that the way the researchers are improving, they are just hunting the new dimensions, and they have been framing the questions on that. So here you have to be very cautious while going for the going for the preparation of this part. But I believe that you should not pay great attention to this, because your actual syllabus starts hereafter, and that is Indus Valley Civilization. Right now, Indus Valley Civilization is such a topic from where every year you find the question. Am I correct? There is no year, I believe, where they haven't asked a question from Indus Valley Civilization. That's important topic, and there are multiple reasons, because of what IVC is important. What do you think? That is it important all because of this reason, that it is one of the earliest civilizations in the world, which which took place in Indian subcontinent, or there are some other reasons also because of what IVC is being asked so frequently? Technology, fine. Okay, fine. What else? Can you tell me something else? Yeah, 2 days back only, I was in a national seminar that was held on IVC, right? And of course, some of the great people, some maybe some stalwarts, basically, they were part of it, such as Nayan Jyot Lahiri was there. Then the director of the ASI was there, Director General of ASI, Director General of National Museums were there, and they, in fact, the person Sanjay Manjul, Dr. Sanjay Manjul, who is right now excavating Rakhi Gadi, he was also there. So I got the chance to meet with them, right? And in fact, of course, I'm not an archaeologist. I do not know much about archaeology, but yet, when you interact with them, you come to know one thing, that actually, there are so many new things are being exposed on IVC. Okay. In last 1 decade, frankly speaking, extensive researches and the excavations have taken place, and in fact, they have revealed several new dimensions. Can you tell me one thing? Just now, I was I had been talking about that archaeologist, Dr. Sanjay Manjul. He is the Deputy Director General of ASI right now, and he is involved into the excavation of ASI. And he said that when he excavated Rakhi Gadi, there are 7 layers of Rakhi Gadi actually. So when he excavated Rakhi Gadi, he was surprised to know that Rakhi Gadi, which was never given such a great significance in IVC, but then now it has been revealed that when you talk about the early IVC, maybe you are not aware of early IVC right now, But then early IVC is that phase which is coming immediately before the mature phase of IVC. That is the largest culture, early IVC culture that they have found in Rakhi Gadi. Now, can you get like, can you get like, are you able to get what exactly I've been trying to discuss? I'm simply trying to discuss that since the excavations are going on and there are new things which are coming up, and this is how, like, IVC is not only important, but it is day by day becoming more important. But then what is to be noticed here, that actually when it happens like this, in that case, like, the new challenges are coming to you, because now they have been framing the questions on the basis of the new findings also, the way they were being included in the academics. Now the questions are, like, coming on that. You remember, like, if you have seen the PYQs, they had asked one question on basically the water management system in Harappan civilization. Now, if we'll go for a serious analysis of that, you may realize one thing: this question was asked only due to this reason, that while excavating Dhawalavira, they realized they had a very beautiful water management system. And again, I'll say that when I was, like, talking to Dr. Sanjay Manjul, now he said actually these people had an expertise in making the artificial canals, and these canals were sometimes made underground also, and that's how they have been supplying the water, or they have been getting the water. So I hope you can understand how expert they were in these things when these kind of things are being revealed. And when these kind of things, like, people are getting the chance to make the papers and all, or let's say even those who have been doing the study, like, on IVC, now they, of course, they will frame the questions on this. So IVC is earlier also important, and now also it becomes more important. And that's the reason, because of what you leave that older dimensions, because what were the older dimensions, like, let me tell you, the older dimensions were, one was basically the origin of IVC. There are two different theories, the migration theory and then the indigenous theory. These are two theories for the origin of IVC. Then it comes to the second thing, that is about the town planning. The third, like, it goes to the decline of IVC. And if you'll see the syllabus also, like, you can see the origin is there, like, then the decline is there, and then the architecture, right? So basically these three things: origin, then survival, sorry, origin, and then architecture, and then decline, somewhere the decline. Okay, these are the three topics which are highlighted a lot. But then what is happening in the current time? Now they have started asking the questions in a very new dimensions also. You remember, like, this year there was a question. This question was this: ki, how come you find it was basically the aesthetic sense in Harappan, like, religious pattern, right? Now you just understand the point that this is one of the debates which is not being covered in most of the sources. Like, it's a very rare kind of debate which is, like, which is there, but they have started framing the question on these kind of rare dimensions also. So IVC is, as I told you, important earlier also. IVC is even important in the current times. But then when you have been preparing the IVC in the current time, you should try to open up or unfold certain new dimensions which are very much related to the recent discoveries, and then you should try to cover those parts also, because that's how IVC has, like, IVC, the questions coming from IVC has changed a lot, and that's how you need to change your approach in IVC also. Okay, fine. Then the next is the megalithic culture. Now, when it comes to the megalithic culture, just now I told you that megalithic culture is one of the topics. Again, extensive researches are going on. Megalithic is very important in Indian history, and in fact, day by day, the significance of the megalithic is increasing. Do you know why? Because now megalithic is considered to be the connecting point between connecting point between basically the primitive cultures and the Sangam age culture. Earlier, it was believed that the Aryans migrated to South India, and that's how the civilizations began in South India. Now that has been challenged, and that's how, like, now more researches were going on. And in fact, you might have come across these kind of articles very frequently being asked in the, given in the newspapers. And in fact, they have been trying very hard to prove that actually it is quite possible or probable that in South India had the oldest civilizations in the world, and they are even dating it previous or before the Indus Valley Civilization. So these kind of debates are going on. So megalithic is gradually gaining importance, and you have to also pay attention to megalithic. You can't read megalithic only in this much content. Like, mostly megalithic is one topic which is being ignored by everybody. कौन पूछता है megalithic? ये सोच के छोड़ देते हैं. ये megalithic और chalcolithic को लेके मोस्टली लोग सोचते हैं कौन पूछता है megalithic और chalcolithic, आप छोड़ के निकल जाते हैं. बट ऐसा है नहीं. megalithic की भी सिग्निफिकेंस है, पिछले कुछ टाइम में बढ़ी है. So you should focus, like, even on megalithic also. Okay, fine. Now moving to the next one, Aryan and Vedic period. Fine. Now, again, when it comes to the Aryan and Vedic period, earlier it used to be very important topic, and in fact, you can see that abhi bhi now questions are coming from this particular topic. I won't say the questions are not coming, but then earlier what happened when it comes to the Vedic period, there were a couple of dimensions which were important in Vedic period, such as Vedic polity, like what sort of transition was there, Vedic economy, what sort of transition was there. Same is for the society and religion. But in the current times, what happens? The Vedic period, is again being reinterpreted in multiple ways. I hope you all must be knowing the Aryan debate is yet going on in India, and in fact, there are certain periods are coming in which this particular debate has been given, has been given more emphasis. So of course, there are certain political reasons also because of what this debate is coming up again and again. But then, whenever this debate is coming, now the new discoveries are happening in Vedic civilization, and not I won't say new discoveries, but rather I'll prefer to say that the new dimensions are now being opened up on Vedic culture. This is the reason because of what when you have been preparing this particular part, the Vedic culture. You should try to understand it with the new dimensions which are being opened up by the scholars in the recent times, and the way the new dimensions are bringing the new debates in the history, and those debates are becoming important. Fine. Okay, the next is the Mahajanpada period. I believe that as far as this Mahajanpada period is concerned, it is undoubtedly important. But then in the recent times, there was no much sort of changes have happened. Rather, it remains the same. So in Mahajanpada period, as you understand, there were three major changes: the second urbanization, state formation, and then third is the coming of Buddhism and Jainism, or let's say the coming of heterodox sects. So basically, when it comes to all these important changes which have happened here, but in the last few decades, I must say, there is no extensive change. Mahajanpada period has always been very important when the Marxist scholars were very active. Have you noticed ever that? ठीक है, जब Marxist scholars मतलब R.S. Sharma, then some other Marxist scholars like Ranveer Chakravarti, they were very active at that point of time, and they were trying to discuss the megalithic period as a uh, as a period of they have discussed the Mahajanpada period as a period of the formation of multiple institutions, like the institutions what I have been discussing just now. So earlier it was seen as one of the transformative phase of Indian history. But then nowadays, I don't believe that this transformation is this transformation is considered to be very important. Of course, it is important, but the approach has changed now, and that's how now in megalithic either the questions are not coming, or else the questions are coming somehow they are not paying proper attention to or the proper attentions were not being paid to this particular period, and that's why here the repeated same questions are coming. Rather, I'll say just one thing for this particular period, that in this particular period the societal transition has become very important, and in fact everybody is trying to locate the societal changes in a very new perspective. That is only thing which remains very important in this period. Okay, fine. Let's move to the next one. Now moving to the next dimension is the early state and society in the eastern India, Deccan and South India. The Kharvelas, Satavahanas, this is and the Sangam age. These are certain things which are there. Now I have already discussed whenever it comes to the early state and society in eastern India, Deccan and South India. Now this is a part which has become so important in the recent times. Specifically, which parts? Let me tell you. The sorry, Satavahanas, they are very important. I told you that there was a very new interpretation had been given to Sangam age. Earlier, when you saw the Sangama age, what is the most important thing? The most important thing was the Sangam literature. That is the only thing that you have paid proper attention. Okay, the Sangam age. Then Satavahanas were also important, right? So basically, this is there are two important things that you cover here. It is since it is the Deccan and South India, the Eastern India, Deccan and South India. So now Eastern India, Deccan and South India, look, try to locate this particular topic differently. When you study the Indian history, which part of India has been focused more or emphasized more in Indian history? North India. And can you please tell me that what is the reason because of what North India has been paid this much attention while writing the history? Is it like that? Is it just because of this reason that they have been writing a lot on North India? Mauryans. The seat of Mauryans were there in North India. Seat of Guptas were there in North India. Correct? Correct. Correct. To a certain extent, it is correct. But then I'll tell you a very simple thing. Look, there is one thing you always keep in mind. The history is being written more where the sources are available more. That's a simple reason. Understood the point? नहीं समझ आई मेरी बात. History is written more only when the sources are more. Correct? जहां पे बहुत सारे सोर्सेज है वहां पे हिस्ट्री लिखने की गुंजाइश ज्यादा है. ठीक है. जहां पे सोर्सेज कम है वहां पे कम है. फाइन ना. सिंपल एज दैट. कॉम्प्लिकेटेड नहीं. अच्छा, आपको एक बहुत बेहतर एग्जांपल मैं देता हूं. जब आप विजयनगर और बहमनी के बारे में पढ़ते हैं, किस पे एम्फेसाइज ज्यादा करते हैं, विजयनगर पे या बहमनी पे? विजयनगर पे. क्यों विजयनगर पे एम्फेसाइज? दोनों पैरेलल है, दोनों पावरफुल. जब तक बहमनी था तब तक बहमनी ज्यादा पावरफुल. करेक्ट ना? तो बहमनी के डिसइंटीग्रेशन के बाद केडीआर इज कमिंग, कृष्णदेवराय इज कमिंग, एंड देन ही बिकम्स मोर पावरफुल. Then why do we emphasize more on Vijayanagar? Why don't we emphasize more on Bahmani? Reason is very simple. Most of the travelers coming, like during those years, they had been visiting Vijayanagar. Necessarily, they had been visiting Vijayanagar. Bahmani was the secondary choice for them. Am I correct? That's how we are available with more sources, right? And that's how we write more about Vijayanagar. Exactly the same logic is applicable here also. When you talk about this period, specifically the South India, Eastern India, Deccan, unfortunately what happened while writing the Indian history, most of the historians found the sources quite easily for North India. Why? Because the literary sources were available. Fine. And that's how we developed a pattern of chasing the Aryans while writing the history of India. South India. I'll come to that point also. Questions are coming. Fine. I'll resolve the questions towards the end. I'll come to all the questions. Okay, fine. But try to get me right now for the whatever I have been discussing. So what did I tell you? That there is a pattern that has been followed in in Indian history, that they have been chasing simply the Aryans. Aryans are coming to the northwestern part, early Vedic history. They are coming to the Gangetic Valley, right? The later Vedic period. They are coming to the middle Gangetic plains, right? The Mahajanapada period. Then there you see the state formation, the Mauryans are coming. Then Mauryans were further followed by some post-Mauryan, and we are emphasizing on, in that case, on basically the Sungas. Then we emphasize on the Kusanas. That's how we have been emphasizing on them, right? And then after that, the Guptas are coming. And after the Guptas, we had been discussing about this tripartite struggle and all. This has been the pattern of history writing. Is it the right way of doing it? Is it the right way of writing the history just by focusing on a specific area? No. And it is not true that this was not questioned earlier. This was very much questioned earlier also. And long back, in 1960s, people had been questioning that why to write the history of only North India. And then people went to South India also. But then, of course, after coming to South India, they wrote something on South India. Correct? उन्होंने लिखा कुछ. Neelkant Shastri, you must be knowing. I think you might have heard the name of Neelkant Shastri. The history of South India, that was written by him, and he tried to fill the gap. But then those many writings which are available in North India, okay, for North India, these many writings are yet not available in for the South India. Why? Because certain limitations were also there. Now limitations, what he is asking, why these limitations were there? The limitations were there for this reason, that why don't we find so many literary sources over there? Because look, first of all, this is not true that they are not available, right? They are available. Specifically after the Sangam period, not only it is the Sangam literature which is available, apart from Sangam literature also, there are so many writings are available. It is the intention of the historians, right, that whether they were willing to write about the history of South India or not, or history of Deccan or not, or history of Eastern India or not. So basically, in the recent history, what we which is being written in last 2 to 3 decades, now people have somehow understood the limitations of Indian history writing, and that's how they have started going to those fringes of Indian history, and they're trying to reveal and the write of history of this period. Correct? That's how Deccan, Eastern India, South India, they are being asked a lot. And if you don't trust me, in that case, I'll simply ask you to go and check out the previous year papers. When I'm saying previous years, focus more on the questions of last 4-5 years. And frankly speaking, you'll be able to realize one fact, that now the questions are being asked on these fringes. ठीक है, जो core area था history writing का, उससे हटके जो fringes है उसमें से लिख रहे हैं. And that is how the new researches are going on, the new kind of writings are coming. So in last 3 4 decades there was extensive writing has been done, and gradually this part is gaining importance, right? So that is how this is a new area which is becoming important. Fine. Now, let me tell you one more thing, such as when it comes to the post-modern period. Now, that post-modern period is very important with respect to many things. Now, if you'll read that chapter of Upinder Singh, so see, he has called this particular period as a period of interaction and innovation. Why interaction and innovation? As as far as India is concerned, now you find certain changes were happening with the Satavahanas. What is this change? Is the change is there with the Satavahanas? Actually, they were coming from the Deccan region, and there was no state ever formed in the Deccan. So Satavahanas had been forming the first state in Deccan, and then there were the tribal people. They they somehow went through a transition, and they're forming this. This is a new initiative that can be noticed. When you go to the northwestern part of India, you find that there were so many outsiders coming to India, and they had been coming from different parts, such as they were coming to coming from Central Asia, they were coming from the north of China, and they were coming to this part, and they had been establishing their states. That is the interaction. So what you find that there are so many examples of interactions and innovation, and this interaction and innovation, if it appeared most prominently somewhere, so there are two domains. And what are these two domains? Political domain and the economic domain. Could you understand my point? I think I am bit thoda speed zyada. Okay, fine. Let's slow down. When it comes to the postmodern period, right? After the modern, so you might have heard of Kusanas. ठीक है, Kusanas सुना है. तो Kusanas का Indians तो नहीं थे. Kusanas were coming from outside. ठीक है. In fact, Kusanas were not the only one coming from outside. Apart from Kusanas, Sakas were coming from outside. Indo-Greeks were coming from outside, right? Even the Parthians were coming from outside. There were so many communities where, or clan, let's say tribal groups were coming from outside, and these people had been forming the state over here. Correct. After the formation of of course it is a political change. Am I correct? It's a political change. So it is a major political shift that you find. What next? If we'll see the result or the outcome or the impact of the coming of these people as a as a result of this particular transition, what happened? That somehow India's economic relationship, or let's say trade relationship, became much better as compared to the previous period with basically the people in the other regions, such as eastern Eastern Europe, and then West Asia and all these parts. So economic developments and the prosperity is the another reality of this period. There is a sort of major change happening here, okay, with respect to this. So questions most of the time would have been asked on the polity or economy, but then if you'll see the questions coming from this part, they are not based on economy and polity, rather they are based on some sort of societal and the religious development in this period. Why? The questions are being asked on the society and religion, because it is these are the some new areas where scholars are working, and it is nothing but a sort of twist or change in the history which is coming. Fine. Because of what? The way the new dimensions were being picked up, and the questions are also being framed on these dimensions. So it is, I think, as simple as that. There is no complication at all. So that's how when you have been covering this part, you need to become very cautious. And in fact, there are several types of there are several types of let's say themes of the dimensions you should cover in this part, and you have to identify what are the areas which have become more important these days. Without having the knowledge of that, it becomes important. It becomes it is definitely going to become difficult. Okay, then it comes to the Guptas, Vakatakas, and Vardhanas. This is the next period. And when you talk about this next period, now Gupta period is one area from where I find very lesser number of questions being asked. ऐसा नहीं कि Gupta period से बहुत सारे questions आते हैं. There are very few dimensions which are being asked from this period. And in fact, again in this part, I'll say the cultural developments have become more important. And that's why more questions are being asked from the cultural developments from this part. That's how you should also try to see the Gupta period with a very different perspective. Okay, fine. Now, here onwards, whatsoever topics are there, frankly speaking, they have become very important for you. And what are they? Earlier, there was one period, no questions were coming from this part, except certain debates, such as the moment you talk about early medieval, because all these topics are basically early medieval. And what are these topics? Regional states during the Gupta era, okay? And there were various regional powers are there. Kadambas are there, Pallavas, Chalukyas, and their polity and administration, trade guilds, literature, growth of Vaisnavas and Saiva religion, Tamil Bhakti movement, Sankaracharya, Vedanta, institution of temple and temple architecture, Palas, Senas, Rajputas, Parmaras, polity and administration of them, the cultural aspects, the Arab conquest of Sindh, Al-Biruni, the Chalukyas of Kalyani, the Cholas, Hoysalas, Pandyas, polity and administration, local governance, growth of art and architecture, religious sects, institution of temples and mathas, Agarharas, education and literature, economy and society. There were so many things which have been fine. And if we'll move to the next one, right? Themes in early Indian cultural history, which is the last topic. Formally, it is the last topic of ancient India. So it is language and text, major stages in the evolution of art and architecture, major philosophical thinkers and schools, ideas in science and mathematics. Correct? Now, I believe that in last few years, frankly speaking, these two topics have become very important, right? Upload a document to you, I'll upload the document on your online portal, and there will able to and somehow able to compare how the number of questions are rapidly increasing from the early medieval part. Now, early medieval is very important in the current scenario for you. And why is it important? Let me tell you very frankly that earlier early medieval was understood with respect to feudalism. Am I correct? What was the most important change in the early medieval period? It was feudalism. Now, feudalism indicate ancient or medievalism. What is being indicated by feudalism? What does it indicate? आपको क्या लगता है? Feudalism is one of the phenomena which is considered to be the basic or the most important sign for medievalism. It is believed in the European context. Specifically, there are two prominent scholars in Europe that's called as Henry Pirine and Mark Bloch. They said that with the coming of feudalism, Europe went through a transformation and Europe entered into medievalism. Now, you might have noticed that most of the Marxist scholars R.S. Sharma, and then some others also, D.N. Jha, and then most of the Marxist scholars had been accepting that feudal theory, and they believed that with the coming of this feudalism, India also entered into medievalism. Fine. But then what happened in 1980s and 90s? There were certain scholars they challenged. Was there any feudalism in India? Or else how feudal the Indian feudalism was? So basically, they have questioned over the feudal character, and they have ultimately revealed one thing, that actually it was not feudalism, and if it had certain structural similarities with the European feudalism, yet it remains qualitatively very different from the European feudalism, right? So you can't say that the same European feudalism was present in India. In fact, they even question the term feudalism. They said that we can use the term Samanta for it rather than feudalism, because feudalism is not just a term. Feudalism is an institution, and whether the same institution was there in India or not, now they believe it is not the same institution. Fine. So if it was not the same institution, in that case, we should see the early medieval period in a different way. So mark my words, what exactly I'm willing to say. I'm simply willing to say one thing. Just a second. Okay. I'm simply willing to say one thing. As per the early belief, it was part of medieval. Now, since it has been questioned, it is not anymore part of medieval, or it is yet in a dicey condition. And this is the reason because of what, from this particular part, not only the questions are being asked in medieval, but also the questions are being asked in ancient. तो दोनों ही जगह पे इस टॉपिक से क्वेश्चंस पूछने इन लोगों ने शुरू कर दिया है. सो इसका मतलब ये है कि नाउ दिस इज द टाइम टू बी वेरी कॉशियस, एंड दिस पर्टिकुलर पार्ट शुड बी प्रिपेयर्ड प्रीटी वेल. एंड एज आई टोल्ड यू दैट इन पास्ट few years, there are several questions that have been asked from this part, right? In fact, just a second. Okay. Now, this year only, 2024, they asked one question. The question was, examine the course of Pallava and Chalukya conflict between 6th and 8th century. Fine. Examine the role played by the Agraharas in the promotion of education in early medieval India. Next question, highlight the contribution of Aryabhat, Baramihir and Brahmagupta in the field of astronomy and mathematics. These are the questions that I have been reading from the last year only. Correct? So, 3 questions from these 2 units. And look at the nature of the questions. Like, first question I told you, the Pallava Chalukya conflict, correct? Na? Now, this is from the Chalukyas of Kalyani, and they are having the conflicts with the Pallavas, right? And in fact, it is written earlier, even we could not imagine they are going to ask this question on the Chalukya Pallava conflict. They have asked the question. Fine. So it is from the political history of this part. Next question I told you, that is about the highlight the contribution of Aryabhat, Baramir and Brahmagupta in the field of astronomy and mathematics. Look at this. Like, the ideas in science and mathematics that has been asked, right? What is the third question I told you? The third question I told you that examine the role played by the Agraharas in the promotion of education in the early medieval India. Okay. So basically, this you can locate in both the places. Okay, Agraharas, the Mathas, Agraharas, education. Look at the way they have been framing the question. This is the as it is syllabus, like I have taken the syllabus as it is. So they have picked the question from this year. This is what I was trying to highlight. Now earlier, hardly any question could have been asked from this part. और अगर ज्यादा से ज्यादा उनकी मर्जी हो गई पूछने की, चलो पूछ लेते इस साल, तो क्या पूछते थे? Feudalism debate. That's the question. That right about the feudalism debate. I'm not saying that feudalism debate is not going to be asked further in future. मैं थोड़ी paper बनाता है, like I'm not in a condition to know. But then what I was trying to discuss कि the significance of these topics have increased a lot, and that's the reason because of what, like, the changes are there. Fine. So now if you see the ancient India, the first thing, like, that you have to understand, sorry, understand the syllabus in a different way. Is it okay with you? Okay. Now syllabus should be comprehended or decoded in a very different way, and while decoding this particular syllabus, don't follow the same previous old pattern that okay, PYQs have been there, like, that's why the questions are there. And trust my words, you compare, like, go to your home and compare the questions which have been coming from the same topic 10 years back and the questions which are coming from, like, these topic questions which are coming from the same topic in the current times, right? So if you'll see the questions, such as I just told you that IBC, the questions have, like, nature of the questions have changed. Like, let me read one question. The Harappan art contributed to our understanding of their aesthetic sensibilities in addition to the spiritual and ritualistic life. Now, it is not asking you to write about the Harappan religious, like, pattern. That could be a simple form of question. Like, if they would have been asking this in that case, like, at least I would have agreed ki theek hai yaar, they have been asking the same repeated question. So it is based on Harappan religion. What happens while seeing the question when you're basically in a very immature stage? You're not able to decode these kind of things. What do you think? Ah, theek hai na, Harappan religion karna hai, Harappan religion pe question aa raha hai. But then this question is not based on simply Harappan religion. They have been asking ki how come, like, it was helping us, like, Harappan art contributes to our understanding of their aesthetic sensibilities in addition to spiritual and ritualistic life. Correct? Okay, there was a megalithic question that I had been discussing. Discuss different type of megalithic burial practices in India. The different types of megalithic burial practices in India. Though I won't say it is not there in the content that you have been reading. It is there. But then nobody might have paid attention to these kind of things, but they have asked the questions. Like, look at another question. Western Kshatrapas are known for their socio-economic contributions, particularly in trade, agriculture and urbanization. Now, Western Kshatrapa, matlab Rudradaman first and Rudradaman second. Now, they haven't asked a single question on Rudradaman first, but then this year they asked the question. So basically, when it comes to the ancient India, like, the things that you need to keep in mind, right? Just a second. Okay, fine. What I'm trying to do, I'm just trying to suggest few things. Now, these are the key takeaways, like, for this class. This is what I'll say. So, let's say, when you have been covering ancient India, what are the various things that you should keep in mind? First, decode the syllabus as per recent trend. Something similar to it. Don't be dependent only on your ecosystems. Change this habit. Now, I'll be moving to a very new dimension. Okay? Again, listen it very carefully. What is happening these days that when they ask the questions, right? When the UPSC people ask the questions, they are asking the questions on a very, let's say, either new dimensions. Fine. Now, what do I like? What do I want to say about this new dimension? Like, let me read one question. I think that question could make you understand that what exactly I'm willing to say. The symbiotic relationship between Buddhist establishment, traders, artisan guilds, and royal support led to a close proximity of religion, economy, and polity in the Mauryan and postmodern period. Examine the statement. Fine. मैं जानबूझ के टफ क्वेश्चन पढ़ रहा हूँ, डरिए मत ऐसे, ठीक है? Don't get scared. But why? Like in that case, you may be asking this question. आप डराने के लिए टफ क्वेश्चन पूछ रहे हैं, मैं डराने के लिए नहीं पूछ रहा हूँ टफ क्वेश्चन. मैं क्या समझाना चाह रहा हूँ आपको? When the questions are coming in a group, right? ना units में आते हैं question. So it is not your choice that you can select any of the three questions, right? You have to select the three questions from one unit. So what happens, like people, those students who have been writing the paper, like specifically means, they always come and complain for one thing, कि सर दो तो मुझे बहुत अच्छे से आता था, एक में प्रॉब्लम थी, है ना? और वो एक जान लेके जाता है, तो जान देनी नहीं, उसको ढंग से प्रिपेयर करना है, right? What is this? Now look at this question. As I told you that it is asking you that during the modern and postmodern period, there's Buddhist, like there was a close relationship, symbiotic relationship between Buddhist establishment. What is this Buddhist establishment? Chaityas and Viharas, correct? Chaityas, Viharas, they were mainly the Buddhist establishment. Buddhist, sorry, Chaityas and Viharas, Chaityas and Viharas. The second thing is the artisan traders and artisan guilds. So traders were those who had been trading from moving from one place to another place, right? And the artisan guilds, Srenis basically, correct? So that is one thing. And the royal support. Matlab at one hand, the Buddhist establishments are there, economic classes are there, and political classes are there. And there was a symbiotic relationship between these three. Fine. And they are saying that because of this, ultimately we find a very close relationship between religion, economy, and polity. Right? So it is asking the relationship between religion, polity, and economy. And there was a interconnection between all of them. That is what has been asked in the question. Correct? Buddhist establishment का हाँ ठीक है हाँ correct. Everything is interconnected. How? Okay, fine. How many examples you require? ठीक है बहुत सारे. Okay, fine. So you are having questions on the this one, these two relations, economy and that. Okay, fine. Look, since the beginning, you will find that Buddhism was very closely related to the economic classes. Why? Look, when you see the growth or the development of Buddhism, right? At that point of time, what happened? The class which was economically very sound but was not enjoying social status, which class was this? The Vaisyas. They were coming from this class. So now they had aspirations. You just imagine, right, that you live in a village and then your village is much dealing with the caste system and all. Let's say you are coming from a lower caste, untouchable मान लेते हैं. And then what happened? You are coming from an untouchable class and you're in your society, the caste taboos are being followed very rigorously. But then let's say you studied a lot and then you cleared UPSC exam and you become IAS officer. Okay? So when you revisit your village and a person who is from a Brahmin family asks you to sit on the ground because he is Brahmin and you are untouchable, will it be acceptable to you? When you upgrade yourself in the class order, you always expect to become upgrade yourself even in caste order. You won't accept it. So I hope you can understand that these Vaisyas were ultimately expecting the social mobility. The Brahminism was not allowing them the social mobility. And since they were allowed to mobile, or let's say upgrade themselves socially within Buddhism, and that's how, it was a give and take relationship with Buddhism. So what Buddhism was doing? Buddhism was granting them a higher social status, right? In return, they had been granting donations or giving donations to the Buddhism. And that's how there is. This is one example that I have been telling you. There might be at least 3-4 concrete examples of the concrete relationship that can be noticed. The second thing I have been telling you, और भी बहुत सारी, I'm just giving you certain examples, ठीक है, in order to make you understand. Let's say Buddhist monks were very frequently traveling, because Buddhist monks have been categorically asked to travel from one place to another place, and in fact they were not supposed to stay in one place for more than one day. उनको हर दिन अगले जगह पे जाना है और बुद्धिज्म को पॉपुलराइज करना है. But the way it is, in the modern times, there are so many communication channels, and that's how you can easily travel from one place to another place. During those times, it was full of forest and all, so it was not that easy for people to go from one place to another place. So what happened? They have mostly preferred, the Buddhist monks mostly preferred to travel with the, or along with the trading guilds. The traders were moving from one place to another place. They also traveled from one place to another place along with the travel. That developed a close proximity between the two. Fine. That's how the relationship is developing. So this is as I told you, this is just 2-3 relationships. And in fact, by the time post-modern period, you can find that the Buddhist establishments were so close to the economic institutions that sometimes they had been fulfilling their certain other requirements also. Gujarat mein we got a sign where the Buddhist monasteries were involved in some sort of manufacturing practices also. Itna close proximity. That's it. ठीक है. अभी और भी इसमें points हो सकते हैं. I just wanted to make you understand through this. ठीक है. So basically now this is the question. Understand the point. What point I am trying to put forward here? The point is that they are framing new kind of questions. I can bet on this that they haven't asked a single question, even in this line also previously. They asked this question. The point is this: why did they ask this question? They went for some innovations. Am I correct? Now, is it possible in history to innovate the things by your own? Let's say suddenly an idea cracked in my mind. Okay. I have been also studying history for last 30 years. I've been teaching history for last, I am not only teaching here in the UPSC people, I've been teaching the university people also. I have so many publications, I am having. So of course I, a छोटा मोटा historian तो मैं भी, ठीक है, छोटा मोटा, बड़ा तो नहीं है. So I do have these kind of things. But then, can you really believe that there are certain ideas strike in my mind and that become the content of history? Do you really think like that? No, it doesn't happen. If you believe that in history, somehow I developed an idea in my mind and that is going to become part of history, definitely not. History is a discipline which is 100% written by certain historians, right? So if they have picked up this idea, it is not a sort of random idea coming into the mind of any person, right? Rather, there is a writer called as H.P. Ray, that is Himanshu P. Ray. It's a lady. मेल मत समझ लीजिएगा, ठीक है. मुझे भी जब पहली बार मिला था तो मुझे भी झटका लगा था, बिकॉज बहुत दिनों से मुझे लगता था कि एचपी रे कौन है, मेल है, नाम से ही पता चलता है. So I thought कि जो है I went in a conference and then somebody introduced कि this is HP रे, ठीक है. मैं कंफ्यूज हो गया, थी तो लेडी है कहीं, ठीक है, HP रे. उन्होंने बहुत कैटेगोरिकली इसके बारे में लिखा है ना, एकदम प्रॉपर डिस्कशन है इसके ऊपर. So what I'm trying to tell you that when it comes to the new dimensions, they are not randomly being picked. They are picked from some of the writings. Correct. Now, is it possible for us to go for these many readings for history optional? No. It's illogical. Illogical kya? It is practically not possible. Right? So, what I'm trying to tell you that since it is not practically possible, but then whatsoever content just now I discussed in form of an answer, a partial answer of this question, is it impossible to conceptualize? No, it is not very impossible to conceptualize. Maybe I haven't gone through the writing of H.P. Ray, though I have. I'm just telling you that maybe I haven't gone through directly this particular thing. And it is practically impossible for somebody who is who has taken history as an optional without studying history in his or her graduation. But even though with the help of your concept, this answer could have been written or not. Correct? This answer could have been written. So what I'm trying to suggest you, look, ancient India is basically a sort of larger period. It's a very huge period. And in this particular period, we cannot catch the minute development that each and every event like we have covered. That is impossible. And in fact, since it is sort of like it is a period in which there were so many structural changes were happening. And that's why if you have to cope up with these new dimensions, or let's say those changes which are happening, your concept should be very sound. And if you're conceptually very sound, even though if you haven't studied that particular part properly, or from directly from any source, in that case also you'll be able to cover it. You'll be able to not cover it, you'll be able to write the answer of this question. And that's why my suggestion is, precisely, two suggestions I have already given, that decode the syllabus as per the recent trend. और वो आप भुलावे में मत आइए कि हाँ प्रीवियसली भी हरप्पन रिलीजन पे पूछा है, अभी भी हरप्पन रिलीजन में पूछा है, ठीक है, तो वो थीम तो मैंने कर लिया. Getting my point? Most of the people are complaining that I'm not getting marks in the UPSC exam. The point is that have you answered the question the way they have asked they have asked? You're not answering. They have been asking something else. You have been writing about Harappan religion. कहाँ से number मिलेगा आपको? So this is your wrong expectations. You can't expect the marks in this way. So what I'm trying to tell you, let's say you have lesser content, but at least try to answer what exactly has been asked in the question. That's the simple thing. And that you could be able to do only once your concepts is very sound. I'm not saying that this is applicable in all the paths. That's why I have kept all the paths separate, ancient, medieval and modern and world. When you have been approaching to the medieval, that the approach would be very different, right? It would be very different. And that's why I'll be discussing the different approach towards the medieval in tomorrow's session, right? Here I have been discussing precisely for ancient. So that's why first of all change this habit कि आपने एक किताब उठाई, एक नोट्स उठाया, पढ़ डाला और आप सोचते हैं आप रेडी है. अगर ये अप्रोच है तो आप 220 230 क्रॉस नहीं करेंगे, that I can say. And if you also believe that only by putting so many facts will be able to score very good, that is also wrong. If you this is also correct, that if you think that he'll be able to score very good by adding or putting the name of so many historians, because that is another rumor which is there in the market. That if you have been mentioning 10 historians, evaluator would be very happy. बोले ये तो इधर बिठाने का है 10 को, इधर कहाँ यूपीएससी दे रहा है. आपके पास एक दूसरा ज्वाइनिंग लेटर आएगा, यूपीएससी has invited you to become the question setter and the evaluator in UPSC. They won't do it. Correct na? So basically what I'm trying to tell you, that in ancient the concepts are very much needed, right? Decode the concepts, decode the concepts, understand, conceptualize it pretty well. And frankly speaking, only with the help of the concepts you could have answered it pretty well. इसके लिए बहुत हिमांशु पेरे की book पढ़ने की जरूरत नहीं थी. That is another thing, decode the syllabus. Okay, fine. That then don't depend completely on the PYQs, and understand everything, conceptualize everything, comprehend everything. And this is the pattern what you need to follow only for ancient. And don't go for don't believe कि I'll be writing the so many names of so many historians और मुझे number आ जाएंगे, ऐसा नहीं. यार, it's needed, it is compulsory, but then just one or two relevant historians you have been writing, your job is done. This is very important that you are in a condition to write the relevant historians. अब अभी आप सोचेंगे मैं आरसी मजुमदार लिख के आऊंगा, नेशनलिस्ट है, बड़ा अच्छा नंबर मिलेगा. These kind of equations are not working. Recent scholars मतलब अभी जो लोग एक्टिव है, जो लोग ये जैसे अब इसका नाम जो है नहीं पता है, ठीक, अगर पता होता तो आप समझ रहे हैं कि हाउ यू कुड हैव बीन रिवार्डेड. Got the point? So C is the most relevant one. This is what I've been telling you. So now you have been writing this, writing the answer of this question, and you have been mentioning Ranveer Chakravarti and then Romila Thapar. There's no relation. They expected just one name from you, that was Himanshu Pire. That is it. एक नाम उनको चाहिए था, वो दीजिए और काम हो जाएगा आपका, ठीक है. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि आप लोग कहते हैं ना कि सर कैसे याद करूंगा हिस्टोरिक्स, ठीक है. अरे भाई नहीं याद करने की जरूरत है इतनी. और मैं तो ये भी बोलता हूँ कि आप भूल जाइए इस आदत को कि हर क्वेश्चन में हिस्टोरियोग्राफी जरूरत है. When he is asking, or this UPSC is asking this question, now they are not saying कि write it with respect to historians. They have asked you a concept. You need to write the answer of that particular concept. If you remember the historian, this is a sort of extra addition. वो पिज्जा के ऊपर टॉपिंग्स है, टॉपिंग्स आ जाती तो अच्छा लगता है. जब हम थोड़ा सा चिली फ्लेक्स डाल लेते हैं, थोड़ा सा वो अच्छा टेस्ट पड़ जाता है. एग्जैक्टली, ये टॉपिंग है, वो थोड़ा बढ़ जाए, उसको अच्छा लगेगा पढ़ने. बोलो ये नहीं, लड़का अच्छा है, लड़का मतलब आप नॉन जेंडर बायस, ठीक है, लड़का और लड़की दोनों की बात करो. आई थिंक द थर्ड सजेशन इज वेरी क्लियर टू यू, ठीक है. कंसेप्चुअली समझो इंसिडेंट. उसको ऐसे मत करो कि जो है मैंने ये थीम पढ़ लिया, ये थीम पढ़ लिया, ये थीम पढ़ लिया। अगर ये अप्रोच रहा तो कभी भी अच्छा रिजल्ट नहीं आएगा। मैं लिख के दे सकता हूँ, लेके आओ कॉपी में लिख के दे सकता है, नहीं आएगा अच्छा। ओके फाइन। नाउ there are few things I have already shared with you, right? And so that you also keep in mind. ऐसा नहीं कि उसको आप छोड़ दें जो मैंने जो पिछली बातें मैंने की थी। Okay. So the third thing, the third suggestion I told you that make your concepts very sound. That is the only key of success in ancient India. That is the only key of success in ancient India, that you're conceptually very sound. आपको समझ में, और frankly speaking ना, जब आप ancient India पढ़ते हैं, somehow I find it very interesting, like though it's not necessary that everybody of everybody uh, find it important, वो आपके ऊपर depend करता है, correct ना? But हाँ, concepts को, चीजों को समझो कि let's say the ancient India is about what? Is about basically the changes. It is about the transition. It is about the formation of various institutions. Understand the ancient India in a broader terms, not in my very minor terms. That's it, like that is how it's going to work. Fine. And the last suggestion that I'll give you, when it comes to covering the ancient India, what sort of sources we should try to try to refer. At any point of time, I'm not telling you that you should consult so many sources. कभी नहीं कहा मैंने. Ancient के लिए, whatever I have been discussing today, it is precisely related to ancient. I'm telling you. So at any point of time, I'm not telling you that you need to cover the so many content. मैं डराया मैंने आपको थोड़ा, but मैं डरा इसलिए नहीं रहा हूं क्योंकि मुझे कुछ चाहिए, ठीक है। मैं आपको सिर्फ इतना बता रहा हूँ कि आप थोड़ा कंसेप्चुअली कवर करिए, चीजों को सोचिए थोड़ा सा कि अच्छा ये ऐसा है, ऐसा नहीं कि आपने सिर्फ रेट्रोफिकेशन किया और हो गया, ठीक है। नोट से तो पढ़ने की आदत छोड़ दीजिए। इफ यू हैव बीन रीडिंग एनीथिंग फ्रॉम द नोट्स, इन दैट केस यू वोंट बी एबल टू आंसर एवर द क्वेश्चंस बीइंग आस्क्ड इन द एंशिएंट पार्ट, एंड दैट्स अ रीड बुक, एनी बुक, now what book, what source? It is not the same topic wala source, it is the source material for ancient India. So look, there are a couple of books which are important, such as one book is Upinder Singh. Fine. Now this book is undoubtedly important. The another book is Ranavir Chakravarti. Fine. Now these are two books which are important. So what you are supposed to do, when though most of the people are going for which book? Upinder Singh's book. And undoubtedly it is an extensive book. Okay. Rather, I'll suggest you that instead of going for this, I'll suggest you to go for this, Ranveer Chakravarti. And trust my words, बहुत मोटी किताब नहीं है, बहुत पतली किताब, बहुत पतली भी तो नहीं है, 500-600 पेजेस की है। इस किताब से आपको बहुत अच्छे कॉन्सेप्ट्स डेवलप होंगे, राइट। सो आप ना बेसिक सोर्स आप इसको बनाइए, इसको मत बनाइए। I think may I answer this question after the session, because it is not your condition is bit different. Okay. It is a sort of very in general session where I have been suggesting for, मैंने कहा ना कि here I am not suggesting by assuming this that you guys are part of this class, ठीक है। मैं ये तो in general suggestion है, तो सबके लिए है applicable। मैंने क्या कहा, ancient में आपको क्या डेवलप करना है, concept डेवलप करना है, that is the only thing. Now there are so many people, they believe that they can do history by their own. Is it possible? It's very much possible. Can it be done by your own? Of course it can be done by your own. I'm just giving that if you want to do it by your own, how you should do it, right? That's why. Let's say if you have already prepared, already covered the syllabus, yet you are not able to score very good, what are the changes where you are supposed to incorporate? So that is one thing. If you really want to conceptualize ancient India, read Ranveer Chakravarti. And whatever the parts missing here, that you try to compensate from Upinder Singh. Okay. Yet might be there are a couple of areas where you cannot feel so much comfortable. In that case, read some articles or all. Never ever be dependent on just one source. आप जब तक एक सोर्स पे डिपेंडेंट रहेंगे, फ्रैंकली स्पीकिंग आपको बहुत अच्छे मार्क्स नहीं मिलेंगे। ले आइए कुछ भी, मैं लिखने के लिए तैयार, ठीक है। आप स्टैम्प पेपर लेके आइए, मैं लिख दूंगा, नहीं आएगा। अच्छा, कोई भी एक किताब यूपीएससी के लिए नहीं लिखी गई। नॉट ए सिंगल बुक हैज बीन एवर डेवलप्ड फॉर यूपीएससी। I'm not saying that you have to read all the sources. What I'm trying to say, make one book as the base book, right? And then what do you do? Like, when let's say you have been like covering any part, just let's say, for the sake of example, take let's say, Srenis or the guilds. Let's say the whatsoever information you have read, you do not find that any of those like sources are giving you the ample amount of information on them. है ना? फिर आपको क्या करना चाहिए? कोई आर्टिकल ढूंढ के निकालिए अच्छा जो उस पे इंफॉर्मेशन दे रहा है. Just read that article and don't answer this question in the chat GPT. That also I'm telling. Let me like frankly tell you that I tried chat GPT and 90% time it is giving you wrong information. Historiography तो बहुत गलत देता है और बहुत जनरल इन्फॉर्मेशन देता है. इतना जनरल इन्फॉर्मेशन मैंने कई बार उससे पूछा कि चाहे आर्ग्यूमेंट दो मुझे उसका, उसका आर्ग्यूमेंट भी इतना जनरल है कि वो आर्ग्यूमेंट लग ही नहीं रहा है ना? तो उससे काम नहीं बनेगा. ठीक है, उससे काम नहीं बनेगा. तो ये आप एक किताब किसी को बेसिक बनाए और उसको पढ़िए और जहां पे भी लगता है कि यार ये चीज इंपॉर्टेंट लग रही है और उसको थोड़ा सा जो है यू कवर इट फ्रॉम द लाइक अदर सोर्सेज बट द बेस बुक शुड बी ओनली. दैट्स इट. आपके पास इतना वक्त नहीं है कि आप 3-4 सोर्सेज करें, वो प्रैक्टिकली पॉसिबल नहीं. सो दैट्स ऑल अबाउट. सो एज फार एज लाइक द एंशिएंट इंडिया इज कंसर्न, these are few suggestions I have categorically given to you. If you have any like questions, you can ask to me, specifically the online people. Achha, there's some messages are there. I don't know why it's not working. Just a second, I'll be coming. Achha, the people were answering the questions even in the online. Sorry, I could not notice because this is one of my problem while teaching. I never like able to note down the messages. Though I was trying to locate, but somehow it was not reflecting over here, and that's why I could not answer. Anyways, class versus book, which is best? Now that is a good question. Now this is your choice, buddy. ठीक है. I think you are the best person to decide that what is like the what is the right way of doing it. So I think possible in both the ways it is possible. What the class is doing, let me tell you. I just told you that you are struggling in collecting the sources. So when you are coming to the class, I'll just add one thing that if you have been coming to the right place or going to the right place, I can say just one thing, you are getting all the things in a compiled format. That's the benefit of it. If you want to do it by your own, of course there is no problem. थोड़ा struggle करना पड़ेगा, हो जाएगा. ऐसा मुश्किल नहीं, असंभव तो बिल्कुल भी नहीं है. Of course, so that you need to decide. As some people believe that I think they can understand it better while reading the book. Go for it. Right? That's not a problem. And I have already told you that this is not a workshop, right? So don't take it as a workshop. This is a very general suggestion that I'll be giving you for like all the paths. That's it, nothing else. Okay. So I think that you need to decide whether you should go for it or not, right? That's it has not. So this is a general suggestion for ancient. In tomorrow's class, we'll be coming to medieval, and then we'll deal with the medieval part. I'll tell you. Okay. Okay. Thank you all for joining the session. So let's meet tomorrow, and we'll discuss about medieval. Thank you. Thank you all.